So, autism spectrum disorder. It's a term you've probably heard a ton, right? But what does it actually mean? In this explainer, we're going to cut through all the noise, the myths, and the old ideas to really get to the heart of the science, the spectrum, and the real people behind the label. Seriously, take a second. What's the very first thing that pops into your head? For a lot of us, it might be a character from a movie, or maybe some information we heard years ago that's, well, pretty out of date. Our goal today is to help replace those old mental pictures with a much clearer, more accurate, and more human understanding. Okay, if you only remember one thing from this whole explainer, please let it be this. Autism is a spectrum, and that word is so important. It means it's not one single thing. It's a massive, diverse range of human experience. That idea of neurodiversity, that all our brains are wired differently, is going to be our North Star here. So let's dive right in with the basics. What are we actually talking about when we use the term autism spectrum disorder? This is the official clinical definition. Let's unpack it. Neurodevelopmental just means it has to do with how the brain grows and develops, starting way back in early childhood and continuing through a person's entire life. And it's really defined by two main areas: differences in how people communicate and socialize, and the presence of focused interests and repetitive behaviors. So that definition gives us a starting point. But how does a doctor or a psychologist actually arrive at a diagnosis? Well, it's not as simple as a lab test. It's a really careful process based on specific criteria. You know, there isn't a blood test or a brain scan for autism. Instead, trained professionals use a guide called the DSM-5. Think of it as the standardized handbook for mental health professionals. It lays out a very specific framework that focuses on patterns of behavior, and it all boils down to those two main categories we just mentioned. And here are those two categories side by side. On the left, you've got social communication. This can look like a lot of different things, maybe having a hard time with the back and forth of a conversation or interpreting body language and tone of voice. And on the right, you have repetitive behaviors. This one's a really broad category. It can include everything from repetitive body movements, like hand flapping, to an intense need for routines and sameness. It also includes having incredibly deep, passionate interests in specific topics and being either over or undersensitive to things like sounds, lights, or textures. Now, this is absolutely crucial. A diagnosis isn't just a simple yes or no. It also specifies the level of support a person needs to thrive. This is a huge part of understanding the spectrum idea. It ranges from level 1, which is requiring support, all the way to level 3, requiring very substantial support. It's how a diagnosis reflects the huge diversity of needs within the autistic community. Okay, this is the big one, isn't it? The question that's on everyone's mind. What are the origins of these developmental differences? Well, science tells us the answer is pretty complex. Wow. I mean, just look at this chart. It's pretty striking. Years and years of large-scale research, especially studies with twins, have shown us that autism is highly heritable. And what that means is that genetics play a huge role. Somewhere around 80% of the likelihood of being autistic comes from genetic factors. But, and this is a really big but, there's no single autism gene. It's not that simple. Instead, scientists understand it as a super complex interplay. A good way to think about it is that genetics might load the gun, but other factors can sometimes play a role in pulling the trigger. Now, when scientists talk about environmental factors, it's really important to know they aren't talking about things like pollution. They're talking about specific conditions during critical periods of brain development, mostly before birth. This can include things like the parent's age, certain health conditions or medications during pregnancy, or major complications during birth, like being born extremely premature. Okay, we have to talk about this. We just have to. Because this is, without a doubt, the single most persistent and harmful piece of misinformation about autism out there. So let's be perfectly clear about what decades of science have shown us. This isn't a matter of opinion. This isn't some debate that scientists are having. When you look at the entire global medical and scientific community, the conclusion is absolutely definitive. Let me say this as clearly as I possibly can. Vaccines do not cause autism, period. The scientific and medical evidence isn't just strong on this, it is overwhelming and it is conclusive. So you might be wondering, well, where did this whole idea even come from? It all goes back to one single, tiny, and fraudulent study from 1998. It only involved 12 kids. That paper was eventually exposed for what it was: bad science and outright fraud. It was fully retracted and the author lost his medical license. Since then, dozens of massive studies, following millions of children around the world, have all come to the exact same conclusion. There is absolutely no link. And this slide really says it all, doesn't it? The number of credible, peer-reviewed, replicated scientific studies that have found a causal link between any vaccine and autism is a big round zero. None. Zilch. End of story. All right, now that we've put that myth to rest for good, let's shift our focus to what really matters, the actual lived experience of autism. And that means understanding not just the challenges, but also the incredible and unique strengths that so often come with it. First, let's just appreciate for a moment how common autism really is. The latest data from the CDC estimates that 1 in every 36 children in the US is on the spectrum. Just think about that. This isn't some rare condition. Autistic people are our friends, our family members, our coworkers. They are an essential part of the fabric of our communities. And this is so important. We have to move past seeing autism as just a collection of deficits. It's a different way of processing the world, and that difference comes with some amazing strengths. We're talking about an exceptional eye for detail that others might miss, an incredible capacity for deep focus, often called hyperfocus, that allows for true expertise. It can mean powerful logical and analytical skills, and a level of honesty and directness that is incredibly refreshing. These aren't just little quirks, these are real, valuable assets. So when we talk about support and therapies for autistic people, the goal is never to cure or fix them. That's not the point at all. The real goal is to empower individuals. It's about building on their strengths, giving them tools to navigate a world that wasn't built for them, and improving their overall quality of life. And we know for a fact that getting that support early makes a huge difference. And that really brings us to the final and I think most important question, because understanding the science is just step one. The real work is moving from simple awareness to genuine acceptance and inclusion. So the question for all of us is this: how do we build schools, workplaces, and communities that don't just tolerate brain differences, but actually embrace and value them? That's the real challenge ahead.